caught me off guard. A show that was unexpected. One of those shows that really just ratchet up the tension. A show that crushes. A show that kills. Man, oh man, oh man. Late ill kid at OneYoungsta, hold it down, bring that street geek and nerd soul. What is up, my people? Today, all year, coming with another wonderful episode of, that's right, on screen, late night live. We are talking the October Faction. This show caught me off guard. You know what? I'll say this to people that know the comics, that know, the graphic novels or the volumes and all that. I knew nothing about October Faction until I believe like Saturday. You rolling with me? You gonna roll with me? All right, cool. So I knew nothing about October Faction. NERDSoul Light is in the house. Say what's up, y'all. He's supposed to be in the bed, but don't even worry about that. So I knew nothing about this show until I was in a conversation with a young lady and Mike Wellman at Atomic Basement. And she was like, hey, there's this new show on Netflix. It's called The October Faction. It's like some supernatural stuff. And, it's some supernatural stuff. And it's a family. They're fighting against monsters. And they got some family drama of their own. And there's there's an organization. And me, loving supernatural, supernatural horror and supernatural action. I'm like, let me check it out. And I pressed play, and I didn't stop watching until I finished episode 7. And that's because I literally was like, okay, I need to go to bed. Yeah, I was like, it's time to go to bed. It's like someone else, it's time to go to bed. So it caught me off guard, and the more I watched it, the more I was drawn in. I love this concept. I love this concept, and I had a good time watching it. It took me on some roller coaster stuff. Oh boy, giggle box now. So it took me on a roller coaster. Didn't expect it. And ended up liking it way more. This show is no laughing matter, but it's just trust me. What this guy is seeing right now, don't mind him. So it caught me off guard in a way where I'm like, the family's cool. Presidio is cool. These characters are cool. Oh, you need that milk? You need a drinky drink? You good? So it took it to another level where I didn't expect to see the show be that good. And it was interesting. It was interesting seeing the show be that good and continue to impress me. So, for instance, I want to start off. I want to start off with Gina. I think Gina is the perfect place for me to start. Gina is the sheriff. Gina's the sheriff, and seeing her kind of handle herself in the town, and as small as the town is, really shows how connected she is to Dee Dee, who we'll talk about later, to Fred, who we'll get into the main cast, and kind of sets the tone for what this show is like and who this show is about, which I really enjoy. I really like that she seemed, of course, in a TV show, as authentic as you could see. She was inquisitive without being crazy. She was doing her job without seeming like I don't know, like someone who's just like got a bone to pick with Dee Dee. She seemed like a regular sheriff or captain or chief, or I think she was the chief, police chief, police sheriff, whatever. You know them ranks. And I enjoyed that because there's a lot of shows with characters like Gina that are they're like one dimensional. And I also think introducing Gina at the party that they had, well, sorry, not the party, at the wake, I believe, also was a good way to show her outside of being a cop, outside of being, the disciplinarian. So we met her as a friend, as a old acquaintance that we've seen you in years, and I thought that was well written. I think characters written the way Gina was written helped solidify the basis for the normalcy or the world that we would be in without it being too crazy and overrun. Now, real quick, before we go any further, I want to give a big shout out to Geek Fine Art, the artist sponsor wall behind me. Big shout out to him on Instagram, Geek Fine Art, regular spelling. About 95% of this artwork is his, and he's awesome, incredibly talented, super dope. You should check him out. And a big shout out to Blurtish. Big shout out to For All Nerds, Double Toasted, Blurred Girl, Black Tribbles, Thought Crimes. All those guys out there doing it up, holding it down, doing their thing. They're just awesome. So without further ado, since I've kind of given you an idea, we got a sheriff, we got a small town, and it's served up in a way that I think is normal. Peace. So I think it's served up in a way where it seems normal. I want to kind of start talking about the show. I enjoy it in many ways. I think this show is way better than a lot of people give it credit for. I think it's a sleeper. I think it's one of those things that can end up being a really, really decent mainstay for Netflix because it's shot well. I think it's acted well. I would like more action, but we did get action. But I know season 1, you got to lay the groundwork, and there's a lot. There's, organizations, there's, kind of like organizations like Presidio. Then you have a deal with like the monsters, and then you have the warlocks. There's a lot going on. So you do have to lay a lot of groundwork. But I enjoyed this. And one of the reasons I enjoyed this is because I don't think, similar to the way I enjoy Runaways, I don't think the kids or the parents were shortchanged. No. I don't think so. I think the kids got their time, and I think the parents, I think the parents got their time too. I think the parents got their time to really flesh out themselves, who they were and who they were going to be, and kind of how they grew up. That's right. And I think that helped them kind of deal with the trauma that they had dealt with as youth, meaning the parents, and also sort of informed on why they raised their kids the way they raised their kids. And there are a couple things that kind of like we learned soon on that, like they had a surrogate, and once they said they had a surrogate, and I saw the lady in the lady in the water. Once we saw that, and we saw her kind of like Alice come to life. We knew, I was like, that's she's their real mama. Like, we knew that. But with that, with the children, with the parents, with Alice, none of the flashbacks were wasted. None of the flashbacks were throwaways, and none of the flashbacks were filler. And that's interesting, seeing how the show could have went. The show could have went really, really cheesy with a lot of stuff, and it didn't. It played it pretty straight. I mean, there's funny moments, but this show is doing a good job of showing us a family trying to deal with this, with the parents trying to hide the stuff, the kids finding out, and the kids being older teens, being in their very final year of high school. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot. And with that said, I really liked the way these kids handled themselves with their parents and in school. I'll get into each character in a second, but I do like how they dealt with their lives as, as high school kids. So with that said, I want to get into probably like my main sort of child character, which will be Jeff. We meet Jeff. Jeff is kind of like outspoken. He gets into stuff. He's definitely one of those characters that like to start fires just to see what happens. But he never went into annoying territory with me. He ended up having a side of himself that was very nurturing and also ended up being very, I guess, emotional in a good way without being melodramatic, which I think was stifled by the storyline with Philip. Philip, who was another boy that goes to his school, they end up being kind of like romantically involved, sort of. And the problem that this is probably my main problem with this whole show. Everything else I pretty much dug. Philip is whack. Jeff had a good boyfriend in Japan. Alright? Now I know they couldn't move back to Japan. Alright? I know they had to go to Oslo next and they was dealing with their dead granddaddy. Alright? But all I'm saying, and he ain't dead no way, but all I'm saying is, Philip was whack. Philip was whack to him in school. Philip was whack to him multiple times. And I know Philip had a character arc and he changed and he turned, but I won't feel in Philip. I was like, Philip is bad and he bad to the end and I ain't giving him no props. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't trying to give him credit for any type of emotional turn at all. You know what I'm saying? I don't want him dead, but at the same time, I'm like, he whack. All right, you had your chance, Philip. All right, you had your chance. Also, ain't Philip like about 35, trying to pretend like he in high school? I just felt like Philip looked mad old. And I mean, don't get me wrong, none of these people are like 14 years old, but I'm just saying, he looked extra old for his part. And I know you have to cast actors that look young and, because you can't have, but it's like, hey, come on. All right. He looked a little old. But Philip is probably the biggest problem that I had with this story because he just seemed whack. His story was whack. He was whack. I wasn't interested in his character. I wish we could find a better person for Jeff because Jeff, I think, behind all of the bravado, I think Jeff is a good guy, and Philip was whack, and I think they got into melodramatic territory. Outside of Philip, everything with Jeff was on par, but I think he was a problem. He should have just stayed with his homie in Japan. He should just maybe have like a Skype relationship. You know what I'm saying? Just talk on Skype and be like, I love you. And he'd be like, I love you too. And be like, good night. And you speak Japanese and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Philip was just whack. But I do like how Philip, even though I don't like Philip in the relationship, I do like Philip's character turn. And that's one thing that I think that we got in a good way from a lot of our characters on this show. Everybody had a character turn that seemed gradual and made sense. Nobody turned on the drop of a dime. Nobody was this way in episode 4, and then episode 5 they were a good guy or a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was, very, very gradual turn, and they build to it, which is something that I truly enjoy. The next thing I want to talk about is, of course, our girl, Viv, who is also going through her changes. And we'll talk about the changes in a second, but she's going through her changes. She's not as outgoing as Jeff, but she, once again, through her interactions with the young girl, can't remember her name, what's the name, Kat, at school, seemed, once again, very real. Very like, yo, this is a kid at high school. Like, I knew a girl like Viv. Like, they seemed like real characters, which is something that really helped when it comes to shows like this. You want to see characters that either you can relate to, or you can be like, oh, I know a character like that, or I remember someone like that. And it really helped having that to help ground the story. Because when things go crazy, and they do go crazy, it's good to have someone being played the way Viv was being played, and kind of, I guess, give us some sense of normalcy. Now, let's go to the crazy. Presidio is a company or a corporation that attacks and fights, bless you, and, hunts monsters. All right, that's what they do. And you see Fred, Dolores, they're on their job. When we open the show, they're on their job. They're killing monsters. They even kill a monster when they come back to town. They even kill monsters when they come back to town. It's very, visceral in the way that they have to take out these targets, which is cool. I like their character turn of figuring out, oh, there's a whole lot of gray in this. This isn't black and white. And also, we're sort of the bad guys. You know what I'm saying? And, because it happens when you get in this mode where you're like, oh, for Queen and Country or whatever, this is for Presidio, we're doing it for the humans. And, you've been fed this stuff like these are bad guys. And also being born out of the trauma of your loved ones being killed by monsters, you end up in a situation where you're like, we're good, they're bad. That's how it is. No questions asked. And then finding out kind of like the story behind their upbringing, how they were brought together, how they were treated at school, how Dee Dee's father passed, how Fred's brother passed, how Seth was killed and all that. Very interesting how they were brought together with shared trauma, how the family was like, look, we don't want her to be with you, how they kind of like sort of had to fight to be together. And also, the mistakes they made along the way. And you also saw where they drew the line. They when they attacked Harlow House, and you saw Fred see the kid dying and tried to help him. Or when they saw the 2 kids and they saved the kids. And now, we'll talk about whether you should have said something or not, but it was beautiful to see that even in this weird situation, where they were definitely doing what they thought was right, they were able to kind of see later through the lens of either other people or other monsters that, okay, it wasn't all one-sided, and we need to look at this as a case-by-case basis. Because, of course, the monsters still got their beef with Alice. And you have Alice, who honestly, at this time, is a villain and a cruel, cold-blooded murderer. But you see how she was turned to that by being loving, by being giving, by being a teacher, by being outgoing, by being nurturing, and how she was burned for it, and how all of her friends and family and village was killed for it. You know what I'm saying? And she lives with that. She lives with that pain. She lives with that burden of everybody dying because of her. And, losing her children and losing her husband, who had warned her against this at every turn. So it's beautiful to see that you come through this show and you're like, oh, so there's shades of gray in this. And Presidio ain't the bomb. They ain't the greatest. They're not the worst, but they're not the best, and they're not always right. And everything they did wasn't always right. And the torture and the lies and the genocide and stuff like that. But then also the very real truths on the other side is like we've seen whole families drained, completely empty of blood, and werewolves that have mauled whole towns and stuff. So you have this situation where both sides are kind of using the blindfold of extremities to paint the whole other side, when maybe both sides could come together to attack those extremes and then find some common ground. Or at least a place where it's like, hey, y'all stay over there, we'll stay over here. And y'all stay over there, we'll stay over here. And if anything crazy happens, we will talk to the tribunal and all that. And everything will be fine. But they, of course, Presidio works hard at continuing to attack and continuing to subdue and subjugate and all of that. And it's sad to see what Alice had to go through. But I loved how they presented it and how they showed and laid out her story that gave credence to why she was acting. It was, hurt, anger, desperation. It was hurt, anger, and desperation that, allowed them to kind of take those steps to say, okay, we got to fight back. And she's like, no, I got to kill all y'all. You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those real reasons that you look at a show and you're like, oh, okay, cool. I get you. You know what I'm saying? I see where you're coming from. You're going a little far for me, but I see why. I understand where you're coming from. Now, with, the death that we opened up with, we got the dead granddad, we got the dead granddad, and it's one of those things that really changed the game for this show when we find out what he was trying to do all that time and why he was trying to do it. And bringing back that son of his was a huge deal. And I think that was a good entryway to showing the opening for, of course, for Viv, to show her, her loving side, her nurturing side, even though that's the one part that I thought was out of the blue. It came pretty fast, and I was like, like, you don't even notice, like, you saw him kind of save you from the guy, but I need you to see that, I need you to see that this guy could be dangerous. Like, you don't know this guy. I thought that and Philip were the only things I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, nah, I don't know. Like, so you just go let him into your house? You don't know this dude? Dude look weird, got a weird eyeball. Like, so you just go let him in the house? And that didn't sit right with me. But seeing that Granddad was using this to try to get Seth back just goes to show the desperation that he was going through. So with that said, this show is strong, definitely caught me off guard in a good way. I didn't expect this show to be as good as it, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. And I didn't expect it to take me, like kind of transport me from just chilling at home to like their lives and being very interested just from being like, this is just your average other, supernatural show. It's awesome. It's worth the watch. And there's only two things that really kind of like got on my nerves with Philip and how Viv was like so easy to bring in the the convict / Seth guy. Presidio was awesome. Edith was awesome. Seeing how she grew up was awesome. It was just well played, well acted, well shot. It was incredible. And I did not expect this show. I would have watched all 10 episodes if I could have. You know what I'm saying? If I could have watched all 10 episodes, I definitely would have. Like, easily. Because this show keeps you going from kind of like sort of like from episode to episode, keeping you tied in, whether it's a flashback, whether it's some type of, whether it's some kind of like love interest, whether it's a bad guy, whether it's, anything like that, they show up and they show out with this show. The acting is on point. The acting is on point. The shots on point. The direction is good. I think the tone is set just right. This show, wow, the effects could use some help, but I know it's a TV show, so I let that slide. I would love some more action, which I assume that we're probably going to get in the next season if there is a second season, because I haven't read on if there's a second season or not. But this is a show that I dug, man. Dolores Allen is a girl that lost the ability to have children, whose father was killed by a monster that found these two children that could fill the hole in the space for the love that they had for children that they could have between her and Fred. You got Jeff and Viv that are good-ish kids. They're regular kids. They're trying to figure their way out. They've been lied to by their parents for good reasons-ish. You know what I'm saying? Understandable reasons, I'll say. That realize that maybe things like this have to happen because when you have kids and you're in this crazy job that you were kind of like dropped into, and that, it doesn't seem like, Presidio has any, retirement plans. It comes off as a way where it's like, okay, we were angry, we're still kind of mad, but we understand and we're willing to work through this. The townspeople, all of them make sense. All of the school, besides Philip just got on my nerves. But I did think the moment was touching with, I believe it was Steve or Steven, the guy who had died and his ghost was talking to Jeff. I did think that was a touching moment. The show comes through in a very good way. The Allen family, the house, the history there, and also the history of all the other artifacts, figuring out what's going to go on with Maggie and Samuel at Presidio, where Presidio goes from here. There's a lot more to uncover. Where the co-parenting of Dee Dee and Alice goes with the two kids from here. There's a lot to uncover, a lot to learn, and this for me was a show that shines and is definitely worth checking out. You know what I'm saying? A show that has no whack flashbacks. All of the flashbacks matter. I don't think there's a lot of fat on this show. The only fat that I would say is on this show is probably with dealing with Philip. The whole thing with Philip and his family and Philip and the girlfriend, I was kind of like, I don't really care. I want to get, because they would throw that in right after dealing with some like, super event where there was some kind of monster or something. And it's like, yo, let's get back to the monster, or let's get back to Alice or something. I don't care about Philip. I ain't interested. I don't know. Look, he went to his family and they were happily ever after. I don't know. I don't care. So I do think that's the only part of the show where it got melodramatic for me, where I was just like, I don't care about Philip. You know what I mean? I'm not interested in Philip whatsoever. I thought Philip was kind of corny. And I think that when it comes to someone or a show like this, I think that, you know, you got enough people in play where you don't need a character like Philip. I think after he helped Philip, like, just move on. Like, Philip he's happy, he moves on, and then you move on. Now, of course, you don't get the gate ceremony or the gate fest or whatever at the end as much, but I mean, you could still have that scene. It just wouldn't be exactly like that, but I mean, you could have that gate fest type scene. It just wouldn't be exactly the same. I like the alliance with the monsters, the military stuff. I like Alice, the way she turned the gun on Gina and made Gina shoot herself. The way Gina came back and was like, "Look, we got to get our town back." How she met the werewolf and she ain't even blinked. The werewolf fang down. She was like, "Oh, all right, word. What can you do?" She actually looked at him like, "What up, boo?" Like at the end, she was like, "Want some of that wolf?" But that's a whole other thing. But I like how she took charge, went after it, and they created their own little alliance for a second. The show's kind of cool, man. Like, for real. And I didn't even know it was a comic. So for anyone who reads the comic book or read graphic novel or comic, whatever, hit me up in the comments. Tell me some other cool stories storylines they might follow or whatever, because I'm pretty intrigued with this. It's a show that I knew nothing about as of, 2-3 days ago, and binged like crazy. And now I am down for season 2. Show's cool. Show rocks. I dig it for many reasons. And the show is awesome, man, for real. I really want to see where this family goes. You know, we lost some people. Lost Fred, lost Edith. But, you know, we'll see where this goes, where this alliance goes. What can they be? What can Presidio be? What can the alliance with the other monsters be? What is their beef with Alice at this point? And what will change, if anything at all, between them? Can they mend it? Will they fight? Will they be on their own? Will they be on the run? Tons of stuff. So guys, holla at me. I'm gonna holla at you down in them comments. Let's talk the October faction. I'm a new fan. I like it. I like it a lot. This is a cool show. The only thing I didn't like is the melodrama. Jeff should have stayed with his boy in Japan. He should have just stayed on Skype and don't worry about Phil. Phil is messing up your life. Look at you. Got you all hurt up over his family, talking about he ain't good enough for you because he's an Allen or something. Don't worry about all that. All right? Just live your life and just be with the dude in Japan, man. He looked like a good kid. Anyway, guys, before I get out of here, big shout out to, of course, Blurtish, Thought Crimes. You guys are awesome. Big shout out to Panda for being the largest Patreon supporter. I got your stuff coming. Thank you for your support. And of course, NERD, SOUL, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Holla at me. I really, really love your support. Hit a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let's talk about whatever. It could be October Faction, or send me a message on like IG, Facebook or something. We can talk about some other shows, or jump into my other videos. Let's keep the conversation going. And if you don't have a dime for Super Chat, you ain't got a penny for Patreon, just make sure to hit that share. Share this to your friends. A share goes a long way, and I appreciate it. So before I get out, let me tell you one more time. Check out NERDSUL. Check out ARCKATRON, the Space Bridge. New music, awesome for you right now. And until next time, it's peace. Yeah. Come on. October. I said peace. Come on. God. Hey, I said the Warlocks. I said peace. Come on. Presidio. Come on. Presidio. Don't stop. Come on. I said peace. Dee Dee, make some noise. Come on. I said peace, 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 a peace, peace. Come on. I said peace. Woo. I said peace. Yeah. I said peace, 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 a peace, peace. Much love, y'all. We out. Peace.